So I know and admire each of the inductees tonight, even love them, but there's something about Jane. Perhaps it's because we were baby assistant professors together. When I took my first job at Rutgers University, the first action we took is to try to hire Jane. We failed, but a friendship was born. Then Jane and I were baby assistant professors together, kind of cutting our teeth, coming of age as part of the 5-year W.T. Grant Faculty Scholars Program. We had several mountaintop experiences together that literally involved taking chairlifts to the top of the mountain for dinner. I remember on one such occasion, Hiro Yoshikawa might have actually been there as well, where several of the fellows were so frightened going up the chairlift, they literally kissed, this might have been Hiro, kissed the ground when he reached the top. Jane, of course, doesn't do that kind of thing. Greg Duncan and I forgot to get off, so we had to go all the way down the mountain and then back up the mountain. But nevertheless, and more recently I've known her as maybe the most amazing Russell Sage reviewer that I've ever seen as part of my responsibilities on the board. But I have to say, my special feeling for Jane was a little bit soured by the fact that I had to review 8 books, 150 journal articles, and almost 40 book chapters. Really, reviewers ought to get a stipend. Now, when I was a graduate student, one of my advisors said, this business is all about the home run. Forget about the incremental progress. You need a home run. And, I hate baseball, frankly, but I've always had this image in my head of academia being the quest for a home run. And so as I was, laboring over Jane's CV, I realized that she not only had 1 home run, but at least 5. Now, you may ask, why is the gender gap so persistent in the U.S.? Ask Jane. She turns the question around. It's not a gender gap she shows, but a parenting gap. It turns out the childless women are reaching almost 100% of the pay of men, but it's mom's pay that's lagging behind. And what should we do about that? Implement family leave policies that guarantee mom can return to her pre-birth job. You may ask, as people during the era of welfare reform in particular were doing, should moms, especially young moms, be pressured into working? Will working hurt their kids? Well, you can ask Jane this question. It turns out that maternal work doesn't really affect kids one way or another, but there's a critical exception. If moms with kids under 1 work full-time, full year, one can see detectable and persistent negative effects on child development. Again, this emphasizes the critical need for paid family leave. Now, you may also ask, did we win the war on poverty, or did poverty win? You can ask Jane this question. Drawing on lessons learned from her superb book on Britain's war on poverty, she has advocated for a more nuanced measure of poverty, and using that measure, she showed that poverty has fallen by 40% since 1964. Now, this figure was cited at the 50th anniversary of the war on poverty in 2014, including by President Obama and his Council of Economic Advisors. Not bad. So you may ask, what is at the root of child maltreatment? Again, ask Jane. Turns out that when families are unable to access appropriate services or unwilling to accept them, repeated experiences of child maltreatment are more likely to occur. So what to do about it? Recognize, and this is really an important contribution, that children and families can be better served by a supportive and collaborative approach, one called differential response. If you Google this, you will see Jane Waldfogel's name, and you will also see that this idea has transformed the provision of child welfare across the nation. Maybe that's more than is there anything more than a home run? Maybe she batted it out of the park. Now, you may ask, why do poor children fall behind their more affluent peers in school? Again, ask Jane. Let's say that together. Ask Jane. Waldfogel points to the inequalities in kids' early life experiences that are particularly sharp in the United States. Here, fully half the gap in children's achievement, their eventual educational outcomes, is already present when they enter kindergarten. So what do we do about that? We intervene early. And Waldfogel's comparative work is shedding critical insight into which policies might give disadvantaged kids the biggest boost. But beyond these key questions she's answered, or in many cases turned on their heads, Jane Waldfogel's work has 4 key characteristics. Now, in identifying these characteristics, I must admit that since I was inducted in 2014 and named the Margaret Mead Fellow, I've become obsessed with Margaret Mead's quotations. They're incredible. Here's one of them. This is like a little off topic. She says, "I'm against women in combat because women are too fierce." Not bad, right? So first, Jane's work is rigorous. Perhaps she, to quote Margaret Mead, was brought up to believe that the only thing worth doing is to add to the sum of accurate information in the world. Second, Jane's lens is developmental. Perhaps she's realized, again, to quote Margaret Mead, that the solution to adult problems tomorrow depends in large measure upon how our children grow up today. Third, Jane's work is deeply policy relevant. Perhaps she, to quote Margaret Mead, personally measures success in terms of the contributions an individual makes to his or her fellow human beings. Perhaps Jane, too, to quote Margaret Mead again, has never doubted that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Finally, this might be my favorite, Jane's work is clear. Perhaps she, too, realizes, as Margaret Mead did, and I quote, that if one cannot state a matter clearly enough so that even an intelligent 12-year-old can understand it, one should remain within the cloistered walls of the university and laboratory until one gets a better grasp of one's subject matter. Margaret Mead once said, "A woman, even a brilliant woman, must have the following quality in order to fulfill her promise: more energy than mere mortals." Wow, that really captures Jane. But there's a little more. I've been asking around about Jane. I've been trying to get dirt on Jane. This is very, very difficult to do. One of the things I've been trying to figure out is how she stays so fit. After extensive research, she swims. But, people say all kinds of amazing things about Jane when you ask about her. Deans, foundation presidents, students and collaborators, metaphors about nature come up often. A force of nature, one foundation president told me. A rock comes up over and over again, not like hard rock, but like solid rock. But someone, and it might have even been her longtime collaborator, Irv Garfinkel, suggested another image. And it's an image that Pete Seeger sings the best. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, she shall not be moved. I present to you the 2018 Margaret Mead Fellow of the American Academy of Political and Social Sciences, Jane Waldfogel. Oh my God, that was so much fun. Like, we should all have the opportunity to have our life done in greatest hits. Wasn't that great? Because I'm sitting here, I'm listening to all these other great speeches. Somehow I didn't get the message. I got the message like you're going to deliver remarks thanking the Academy. So I'm thinking, I want to thank my co-stars. I want to thank the wardrobe people, the makeup. I'm thinking Academy Awards, like you just thank people and you tell like one anecdote and you're out of here. And then I heard all these other people actually talking about their work and scholarship, and I thought, oh my God, I'm really in trouble. But no, I'm not, because actually Kathy did the greatest hits, and so she's talked about my scholarship, so I'm just it's all footnoted with that talk. So thank you, Kathy, that was fabulous. And thank you all for selecting me as the Margaret Mead Fellow. I couldn't be more delighted and honored. Margaret Mead. The first time I was in graduate school at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, 1978-79, one of my favorite courses was a comparative course in child development taught by Beatrice Whiting, anthropologist. And I remember reading Margaret Mead. And I think actually it was that course and Mead's work that got me thinking about you can learn a lot by studying child development across contexts. But the most important course I took that year was a seminar on social policy with Mary Jo Bain, who was then at the Ed School. So I'd always been really idealistic growing up. I always wanted to do something to make the world a better place. I really was all over the place, though, about what I was going to do. And I took this seminar on social policy, and it's like that aha moment when the light bulb goes off. It's like, oh my God, this is my thing. So that was it. There was sort of no turning back. And I also remember one of the books we read that semester was this pink book by Kammerman and Kahn, the famous book on social services, which is just, of course, the tip of the iceberg of all of their comparative policy work. So there I was. There are those three themes. So learning by studying child development across contexts, focusing on state and national policies to improve the lives of children and families, and learning from comparative policy analysis. There they were. So those three themes have underpinned all the work that I've done ever since. And I was going to tell you about it, but Kathy summarized it all. So the work that I did on What Children Need, very developmental book, Policy and Developmental, Britain's War on Poverty, the U.S. Achievement Gap and Comparative Perspective, the current work I'm doing on poverty and social policy, paid family and medical leave, which seems to be taking over my life these days. But that's a good thing because it means it's moving. And inequalities in child development across countries. So along the way, I've been really fortunate to have some extraordinarily generous mentors and colleagues. My Kennedy School advisors, Mary Jo Bain and David Elwood. My Columbia colleagues, Irv Garfinkel, who Kathy mentioned, Jean Brooks Gunn, who's here tonight, Kammerman and Kahn, who I was lucky enough to work with when I got to Columbia, and lots of friends from other universities and institutions, many of whom are here tonight. So I'll get in trouble if I start naming people because I'll miss people. So, Sheldon's there, Tim is there, David's there, Greg's there, Hero's there. But I'll get in trouble, Ken, but I'll get in trouble because I'll miss people. So you know who you are, but it's great that so many. Ron Haskins is here. See, now I'm in trouble because I'm missing people because I'm only saying, I don't want to miss Ron. I really want to be bipartisan. So, Ron, wherever you are, you're really important too. And the work on the War on Poverty work, that was the
the historical measurement of poverty, that's been cited by Paul Ryan as well, so it's absolutely gone bipartisan. So in conclusion, I wanted to quote Margaret Mead, and of course it's a quote that Kathy used as well, because I think it is her best quote, who I think sums up what many of us aspire to when she said, "A small group of thoughtful people can change the world." I really believe that, and I know that many of you do, and just thank you so much for welcoming me into the Academy. I couldn't be more pleased.